There we go. Hello, home children. It's Monday, September 26th. And let's see, since we are definitely doing a different story than the regular class, we definitely are going to get a chance to just record here. Those of you who are home did children, there's a story you're going to want to grab called Landlady. It is on Canvas. You can get it there, or you can just listen as we go through it, and we can get you a copy of it tomorrow. If you are currently home dead today, you really don't want to be dead tomorrow. Because there is a thing that we're going to do tomorrow that only happens tomorrow, and you are going to want to be here for it. I can't tell you because it connects to the story. Let's see. Your shirt orders will be here right before break will open for. You have homework due tomorrow, which is the one from Friday about popularity. Should be in your notebook, your 10 questions. There is a house point game coming up on Wednesday, so if you go to the 8th grade football game on Wednesday, I will be there and I can give you points. And hopefully you did check your B points. Now you guys know where you are in happiness and stuff like that. And just my one kid I'm having to torture, although in theory it's going to get done for tomorrow because apparently technology hates her. I'm like, and these are your 10 questions for tomorrow, just to remind you. Questions as far as that goes, and popularity and issues, and you guys yelling at each other, and however entertaining it was. Yay! We are not going to do this today just because of time-wise. I want to make sure we have time to get into story because of this. So, a couple things. Foreshadowing. So, you remember when we did that Lady and the Tiger story? And it just ended, and you guys got all flippy and angry, and I was like, we're never going to do a story like that again. This is that story. So this is the one where we're going to read it, and it literally stops in the middle of a conversation of them just being like, hi, how are you? I'm good. And it just stops. And you're like, what? And then we have to go through and find all of these foreshadowing clues, and there is a most definite ending to it. It is just a hidden ending. Now, here's where the problem is. Well, first off, what is the definition of foreshadowing?
Foreshadowing.
Clues in the story the author gave you to figure out the end.
So, it's going...
Suspense.
What? Stupid... Alright, well apparently foreshadowing is going to come last because it hates me. So, I was going to talk about suspense also, the part of the story that keeps you wanting to read more. So, here's why we're not reading our creepy book about kids kissing and dying, is because there is a good chance you guys are going to have issues today. Because you're going to start picking up on the foreshadowing clues. And then you're going to start being like, Mr. Brovicast! And you're going to get all yelly and screamy at me because the foreshadowing clues are going to be different. And so I have to make sure we have enough time for your issues. I'm anticipating lots of issues today. Because our foreshadowing and our suspense go hand in hand. So suspense, the part of the story that keeps you wanting to read more. Do you know what part of the mountain suspense comes in?
Yes.
Rising action.
It is the rising action. So this will be the part of the story where we're not going to finish the story today. We're going to finish it tomorrow. And when we stop today, you're going to be all angry and grump at me because you're going to be like, Mr. Brovicast, we got to know what's going to happen to the puppy. And I'll be like, you're not going to know. And you're like, no! And you're going to try and flip over tables. Because the suspense keeps building of like the puppy dangling above a thing, and you're like, does the puppy die? And I'm like, I can't tell you. And so that's where we're going to build suspense today. Oh, now foreshadowing comes in. And so foreshadowing is the clues in the story. You are going to start picking up on foreshadowing quickly, which is then going to build to the suspense, and then the more you start getting ideas, the more entertaining it's going to be. Today is fun, but tomorrow is funner.
It's not a word.
It is now. So let's talk about the landlady.
I know that.
Does she?
Isn't that the person that owns the property?
It is the person that owns the property.
Landlord.
If it's a dude, it's a landlord. If it's a dudette, it's a landlady. And so this one we can figure out is a landlady, so it's a dudette. You don't have to go higher. I see you, Jada. What's up?
Does the landlady get buried on the property?
I don't know. That's why we have this magical thing called reading. I don't want to steal that from you. So as we get into story, are you trying to flip your table already, Wally? Are you just practicing? I gotta get my flip ready. So as we get into it, again, Friday, we do not have face-to-face learning. It is e-learning day on Friday. And so on that one, you are going to have a story quiz number 3.
No.
Part of story quiz number 3 is going to be Landlady. And so with that one, if you want to jot things down, you're welcome to use them on quiz. If you want to big brain it, that's fine with me also. Most of the quiz is going to be over a story you get on Wednesday called After 20 Years. And so then this one will have probably 3 or 4 questions on there, which is up to you. Bryce-Lee?
How much short story quiz am I going to have?
Probably, I think just 3. Because I think we have the end quiz test coming up like in a week. So I think this may be the last one. Yeah, then we wrap up all the short stories and we get to go on to new things.
What's our next game?
I can't tell you that. It takes the fun. Don't you roll your eyes at me. So let's go to the Landlady. Cough, cough. Hi, Wyland.
This is written by Roald Dahl.
Uh-huh.
Who's Roald Dahl?
Wrong.
You know that?
Mr. and Mrs. Dahl's son.
Lion.
Dahl's son. Mr. and Mrs. Dahl. Because his last name is Dahl. Never mind. Alright. This is why I look forward to my advanced class. Billy Weaver had traveled down from London on the slow afternoon train with a change at Reading on the way. And by the time he got to Bath, it was about 9 o'clock in the evening, and the moon was coming up out of a clear, starry sky over the houses opposite the station entrance. But the air was deadly cold, and the wind was like a flat blade of ice on his cheeks. "Excuse me," he said. "Is there a fairly cheap hotel not too far away from here?" "I'll try the Bell and Dragon," the porter answered, pointing down the road. "They might take you in. It's about a quarter of a mile along on the other side." I was trying to do my British accent. Because where... I didn't say it was a good one. Because where's our story taking place? Yeah, he left London. So then if you left a place, it's not taking place there.
But how do we know he's in Britain?
Same place in America.
And so it's a place called
He could be in Jamaica.
Bath. And so that's what it says when he finally time he got to Bath. And then what time is it?
9 o'clock.
AM or PM? Keep that in mind. And who's the main character so far?
Billy.
And keep that in mind. Billy a porter is the guy at like the train stations that carries your bags and puts them up there. Literally, porter means like transport. It means to carry. So they just have like a little cap on their head and they just take your stuff away.
Oh, like Paddington.
Yeah, like in Paddington. Good reference. Billy thanked him and picked up his suitcase and set out to walk the quarter mile to the Bell and Dragon, which, by the way, is an awesome name for a place. He had never been to Bath before. He didn't know anyone who lived there, but Mr. Greenslade at the head office in London had told him it was a splendid city. "Find your own lodgings," he said, "and then go along and report to the branch manager as soon as you've got yourself settled." Billy was 17 years old. He was wearing a new navy blue overcoat, a new brown Trilby hat, and a new brown suit, and he was feeling fine. That's what a Trilby hat is? I didn't really know. So it looks sort of like a fedora. I don't know if he looks quite as cool as that guy, but he's wearing... Oh, and how old is Billy?
17.
A fresh 17. So we're going to find out that he is out on a real job, doing like a real businessy job thing, because apparently he's no longer in school and in the real world.
Just like Boy World.
He is not. He's just
like Boy
wearing a
World.
hat. Sure. He walked briskly down the street. He was trying to do everything briskly these days. Briskness, he had decided, was the one common characteristic of all successful businessmen. The big shots up at head office were absolutely fantastically brisk all the time. They were amazing. There were no shops in this wide street that he was walking along, only a line of tall houses on each side, all of them identical. They had porches and pillars and 4 or 5 steps going up to their front doors, and it was obvious that, hiccuping, once upon a time, they had been very swanky residences. But now, even in the darkness, he could see that the paint was peeling from the woodwork on their doors and windows, and that the handsome white facades were cracked and blotchy from neglect. Suddenly, in a downstairs window that was brilliantly illuminated by a street lamp not 6 yards away, Billy caught sight of a printed notice propped up against the glass in one of the upper panes. It said, "Bed and Breakfast." There was a vase of flowers, tall and beautiful, standing just underneath the notice. Then a quick pause if you guys are unfamiliar with what a bed and breakfast is. Presley?
It's like kind of like a big house, and then it has like a kitchen on the bottom, so like you can eat there, and then it has like hotel rooms on the top.
Yeah.
Why is she dog?
They're going to talk about this in just a second.
That's a wiener.
So I did it slightly out of order. So a bed and breakfast is very similar to a hotel, but before we had things like Airbnb, if you had a large house and you wanted to rent it out, you could rent it out to people and they could stay with you. And they would sleep in like your spare bedroom, and then you would cook food for them. That was called a bed and breakfast. If you know where Conner Prairie is here in town, right across the street, we have a bed and breakfast in Fishers. It is this place. And so this is the building that's like directly across the street from it, and it's this really fancy one. And you can go there and stay in their rooms. And so if you're coming from out of town, this is a place that you could stay in. So it's like a hotel, but you stay with a family, which can be good because it's comfy and friendly. But it can also be bad if they're like creepy or have bad food or something like that. So it just has like a little balance. And then we're going to talk about a dachshund in just a second. So he's on his way to the Bell and Dragon, which is just like a hotel, but then on the way to the Bell and Dragon, he sees a sign for bed and breakfast. He stopped walking, moved a bit closer. Green curtains, some sort of velvety material, were hanging down on either side of the window. The flowers looked wonderful beside them. He went right up and peered through the glass into the room, and the first thing he saw was a bright fire burning in the hearth. On the carpet in front of the fire, a pretty little dachshund was cuddled up asleep with his nose tucked into its belly. See, dachshund, just like that. The room itself, so far as he could see in the half-darkness, was filled with pleasant furniture. There was a baby grand piano and a big sofa, and several plump armchairs, and in one corner he even spotted a large parrot in a cage. Animals were usually a good sign in a place like this, Billy told himself. And all in all, it looked to him as though it would be a pretty decent house to stay in. Certainly it'd be more comfortable than the Bell and Dragon. A quick pause. Any idea why he makes the comment that animals are a good sign in a place like this? Wally?
Because they're not abusive.
Yeah. So if you can see the fact that they have living animals there, there's a good chance they can at least have, a nice place and food and things like that if you're keeping animals alive.
That's foreshadowing.
What about in the black cat
Yeah.
when the cat wouldn't leave him alone?
Correct. Well, it's not always a good sign. And how old is Billy?
17.
Sometimes teenagers are dumb. Jada?
So if there's animals,
Uh-huh.
that means that there's not a crazy murder in the house.
Typically, that's what you usually go for. Except again in the black cat, which apparently went a different direction. Hi, Bryceley.
Is there gonna be like a Brovicast?
Eventually, kind of on this one. It's not a full Brovicast. It has more pictures to help you out on this one. I'm trying to think. We'll find out. I don't think I have Brovicast on this one. So and the problem with the bed and breakfast is that typically they're way more expensive. Like a hotel may cost you $90 for the night, whereas a bed and breakfast is like $160, $170. Because you're staying with somebody, so it's considered a much nicer stay.
My grandpa and sister own a bed and breakfast.
Do they? Yeah, so it's the same idea. They have like randos stay with them. And hopefully they don't.
Not random, but they have like the upstairs.
Yeah.
They have like a
Like, who's
furnished
this
like
man?
kitchen up there, but there's like a separate entrance that the guests go through.
That's a little
so
different.
they don't have to see them come in.
That would make it a little bit better. This one's not set up quite that way.
Oh.
Jimmy Jam?
I don't understand why you pay extra for a bed and breakfast because most hotels have breakfast.
Breakfast
Free
and
breakfast.
beds.
Also,
Beds and breakfast.
this was taking place like back in the 1950s when most hotels did not have that. But he's going to give you a little explanation here in a second where he'll explain more of that. On the other hand, a pub, which is like the hotel, would be more congenial than a boarding house, meaning open and friendly and fun. There'd be beer and darts in the evenings and lots of people to talk to, and it would probably be a good bit cheaper too. He had stayed a couple of nights in a pub once before. He liked it. He'd never stayed in any boarding houses, and to be perfectly honest, he was a tiny bit frightened of them. The name itself conjured up images of watery cabbage and greedy landladies and a powerful smell of fish in the living room. other words, when you stay at someone's house, they might have weird smells and you kind of get stuck there. So that was his worry, is staying in a random place. And yes, it may be kind of some foreshadowing. After dithering about like this in the cold for 2 or 3 minutes, Billy decided that he would walk on and take a look at the Bell and Dragon before making up his mind. He turned to go. And now a queer thing happened to him. He was in the act of stepping back and turning away from the window, and all at once his eye was caught and held in the most peculiar manner by the small notice that was there. Bed and breakfast, it said. Bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast. Each word was like a large black eye staring at him through the glass, holding him, compelling him, forcing him to stay where he was
It's a witch.
and not to walk away from that house. And the next thing he knew, he was actually moving across from the window to the front door of the house, climbing the steps that led up to it and reaching for the bell. He pressed the bell. Far away in a back room, he heard it ringing. Ding dong. And then at once, it must have been at once, because he hadn't even had time to take his finger from the bell button, the door swung open and a woman was standing there. Now, normally, you ring the bell and you have at least a half minute's wait before the door opens, but this dame was like a jack-in-the-box. He pressed the bell and out she popped. Kind of made him jump. She was about 45 or 50 years old, and the moment she saw him, she gave him a warm, welcoming smile. A quick pause for there real quick. So, again, he wasn't planning on staying here. Where was he planning on going? But then he sees a little sign, and it brings him in, and he goes up and hits the doorbell, and as soon as he goes, ding, the door opens. It's like, ding, and the door pops open, and she's right there, and she's like, yeah, and out she pops. So that startles him, because he figures normally you ring a doorbell and you have time, but apparently she was right there on the other side of it. And her age is between 45 and 50 years old, and I used to refer to her as an old lady, but now I realize that 45 to 50 is not old. 45 to 50 is quite young, and we should not refer to her as old. It is very
45 to 50.
important. It's not important
that's
whether or
like
not I'm
half of
46.
your life.
What's important is that she is not old. She is quite a young lady.
She's very
middle-aged.
Continuing. Ouch. Please come in, she said pleasantly. She stepped aside, holding the door wide open, and Billy found himself automatically starting forward into the house. The compulsion, or more accurately, the desire to follow after her in the house was extraordinarily strong. Have we picked up on foreshadowing things already as we did? Yeah, there's all kind. And the thing is, as we get farther into it, things you didn't think were foreshadowing, we're going to find out were foreshadowing also. Oh, I saw the notice in the window, he said, holding himself back. Yes, I know. I was wondering about a room. Oh, it's all ready for you, my dear, she said. She had a round pink face and very gentle blue eyes. I was on my way to the Bell and Dragon, but the notice in your window just happened to catch my eye. My dear boy, why don't you come in out of the cold? Well, how much do you charge? 5 and 6 pence a night, including breakfast. Oh, that was fantastically cheap. It was less than half of what he'd been willing to pay. Remember, he was avoiding this place because he thought it was going to be more expensive, but it turns out it's even cheaper than going to the pub, which is like a double win. Jimmy Jam?
How much is 5 and 6 pence?
I don't know. At 1950s British money equals cheap. That's as far as I can go. If that's too much, she added, then perhaps I can reduce it just a tiny bit. Do you desire an egg for breakfast? Eggs are expensive at the moment. It would be 6 pence less without the egg. No, 5 and 6 pence is fine. I should very much like to stay here. I knew you would. Do come in. She seemed terribly nice. She looked exactly like the mother of one's best school friend, welcoming one into the house to stay for the Christmas holidays. Billy took off his hat and stepped over the threshold. She's not the mother of one of his friends. He's just making that as a reference. Like, that's how friendly she seems when you like go visit a friend's house and the mom's like, come on in, your house, our house is your house. You can walk around, gives you like a little hug, a little pat. Like, she's that kind of friendly when he comes in. There's all kinds of happiness. Just hang it there, she said, and let me help you with your coat. There were no other hats or coats in the hall. There were no umbrellas, no walking sticks, nothing. We have it all to ourselves, she said, smiling at him over her shoulder as she led the way upstairs. You see, it isn't very often I have the pleasure of taking a visitor into my little nest. The old girl is slightly dotty, Billy told himself. But at 5 and 6 pence a night, who cares about that? Do you guys know what slightly dotty means?
No.
Like 30?
And so it's an idiom. Yeah, it means like crazy, but not like the ee kind of crazy. But like when you go and talk to your grandma, and you're like, "How you doing, Grandma?" And she's like, "How's elementary?" And you're like, "Grandma, I'm 13." And she's like, "I'm not in elementary." "Oh, middle school." You're like, "Grandma!" Like that would mean by slightly dotty, when you're just like, "What is wrong with you old people? Slightly older than me and not old at all people." And so that was what he's talking about, slightly dotty, is the fact that she just has like that older person crazy thing to her. Der person. Yeah. The old girl is slightly dotty, Billy told himself. But at 5 and 6 pence a night, who cares about that? I should have thought you'd be simply swamped with applicants. Oh, I am, my dear. I am, of course I am. But the trouble is that I'm inclined to be just a teeny weeny bit choosy and particular, if you see what I mean. Oh, yeah. But, oh, hang on. I'm going to pause there real quick. We are now past exposition. What comes after exposition?
Rising action.
So, quick question. What do you think is foreshadowing so far? Without yelling at me yet. Good. So I'm curious to see what you guys have found that you think qualifies as foreshadowing. Yes, Grapple?
The death cold air and like when he felt like an ice knife was against his cheek.
Ooh, interesting. All right. Wally?
He relates the sign to looking like it has eyes staring at him.
Oh, I can see that too. Jada?
Kind of like,
Wally?
Raleigh, yeah. Kind of like what you said. I think that she was actually, like, watching him.
I mean, I'm going to agree she had to have been. If she was watching through the doorway and like was maybe, you know how old people are? They have the older people are just like watching out the window, trying to see what's going on out there.
Wishing they could walk.
Who knows? Bryceley?
It's not really foreshadowing, but probably because there's nobody else in the house, so like he's gonna be like do something pretty.
She's gonna bake him
like,
into a pie.
Gonna do something pretty.
That's a different story.
But
That could very well be. Interesting. I can't tell you if any of that's foreshadowing or not yet, but I find it intriguing. Let's get to our rising action. Bit choosy in particular, if you see what I mean. Oh, yeah. But I'm always ready. Everything is always ready, day and night in this house, just on the off chance that an acceptable young gentleman will come along. And it is such a pleasure, my dear, such a very great pleasure, when now and again I open the door and I see someone standing there who is just exactly right. She was halfway up the stairs, and she paused with one hand on the stair rail, turning her head and smiling down at him with pale lips. "Like you," she added, and her blue eyes traveled slowly all the way down the length of Billy's body to his feet and then up again. And I hate to have to stop to explain this, but just to make sure you fully understand how that interchange goes, and I know it's probably going to cause problems, but she's walking up the stairs. She's like, "Hey, I wait for someone who looks exactly perfect, just like you," and then she stops and is like that. And then continues on from there. So
She is gonna bake him into a pie.
Yeah, it is the pie thing, isn't it?
So I hate having to explain that part, because then you guys all like, and you from just
It's the pie thing, isn't it?
again, she's slightly older, and you
I
have
feel like she's kind of like gonna do something to him.
She's a
Like,
bitch.
Obviously,
like
she's
she's
gonna-
like sneak into his bedroom and sleep on the same bed as him or something.
Wow.
Like, she's
Well-
Wait, what happened?
They are going to talk about his bed in just a moment, so we're going to find out.
I didn't mean it like that.
Are you
I meant,
saying you're getting a creepy feeling? from
yes,
it?
I'm getting something like she's gonna
But
treat him
isn't
like
she-
her like maybe she like her son died or something, and like she's gonna do
You're
something.
so
She's.
Yeah.
Is she not really nice?
She's nice.
Shouldn't we always trust really nice people?
No, I didn't mean it like weird as in weird. I meant it as in like.
and I don't trust you.
Jimmy Jam?
Can I make a prediction?
Oh, okay.
I predict that while he's sleeping, she's gonna kill him and make him into breakfast
And that's
feed it to another person.
Wow, that's something.
That's better than what I said.
Jada?
I have a better prediction.
Oh no.
Okay, so what if?
Wow, good prediction. We're done.
Congrats.
Okay, so she kills him violently, and then she mashes him up and turns him into eggs because she says.
I don't think you know the difference between meat and eggs, dear. Continuing. On the first floor landing, she said to him, "This floor is mine." They climbed up a second flight, and this one is all yours. Here's your room. I do hope you'll like it. She took him into a small but charming front bedroom, switching on the light as she went in. The morning sun comes right in the window, Mr. Perkins. It is Mr. Perkins, isn't it? No, it's Weaver. Ah, Mr. Weaver, how nice. Well, I have put a hot water bottle between the sheets to air them out, Mr. Weaver. It's such a comfort to have a heated bottle in a strange bed with clean sheets. Don't you agree? And you may light the gas fire at any time if you feel chilly. Being as that we live in modern times, you guys have no idea what a hot water bottle is. So this is what they used to use before we had like really good central heating and all of our heating was done through fireplaces. Now we have these things called electric blankets. But if it was the winter time, like it is here, they talk about the cold air outside, and you wanted to have warm blankets, they had this thing called a hot water bottle, which was this really big, looked like a balloon, but it was really thick, and you would pour boiling water into it, and then you screw the end on it, and it would then radiate heat. And you put it between the sheets, and it basically makes your sheets really warm and toasty. So that way in the cold winter, you can like snuggle down into it. And she's like, I've already filled the water bottle with the hot boiling water. It's already in the bed, all waiting for you. You just have to snuggle down and go to sleep. Bye, sleep.
I think you're a psycho if you want to have a hot bed.
Yeah, I'm also a cold bed person, but I know it exists.
Wait, how do you know all
He's
this
about
about
to cook.
I have done this thing called reading, and I pay attention sometimes. Someday you guys will try.
The gas fire?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, as Billy said. Thank you ever so much. He noticed that the bedspread had been taken off the bed and that the sheets had been neatly turned back on one side, all ready for someone to get in. See, she's caring and full of love. She has the bed all set for him. I am so glad you appeared, she said, looking earnestly into his face. I was beginning to get worried. Oh, that's all right, Billy answered
Well, how
brightly.
she know he was coming?
You mustn't worry about me. He put his suitcase on the chair and started to open it. And what about supper, my dear? Did you manage to get anything to eat before you came here? I'm not a bit hungry, but thank you. I think I'll just go to bed as soon as possible because tomorrow I've got to get up rather early and report to the office. Very well then. I'll leave you to that now so that you can unpack. But before you go to bed, would you be kind enough to pop into the sitting room on the ground floor and sign the book? Everyone has to do that because it's the law of the land. And we don't want to go breaking any laws at this stage in the proceedings, do we? She gave him a little wave of the hand and went quickly out of the room and closed the door. Again, you guys not being 18 and going to hotels on your own, whenever you check into a hotel, you have to like sign up for the legal document because they have to pay taxes for each person who stays there. And so it keeps track of like who you are, where you come from, what day you stayed, and stuff like that. So that's what she's saying. Make sure you sign the book, because then if you're going to bed tonight, and then you can pay, sign the book, then tomorrow you can leave, and I don't have to track you down. So that's why she's saying you have to make sure you pay, because if you don't, it's considered breaking the law, and we don't want to break the law, because breaking the law is bad. Now, the fact that his landlady appeared to be slightly off her rocker didn't worry Billy in the least. After all, she was not only harmless, there was no question about that, but she was also quite obviously a kind and generous soul. He guessed that she had probably lost a son in the war or something like that, and had never gotten over it. Do you guys know what off her rocker means?
What did I say about the sun thing? It's like a weird.
There you go. And so yeah, it's an idiom. He's like, I can tell, yes, she's slightly weird and odd, but she's obviously harmless. It says so right there. And he assumes that she probably lost a son because they had this like shortly after World War II, and that there's probably a reason why we have these issues. So he's not worried at all. So you guys should probably relax. So a few minutes later, after unpacking his suitcase and washing his hands, he trotted downstairs to the ground floor and entered the living room. His landlady wasn't there, but the fire was glowing in the hearth, and the little dachshund was still sleeping in front of it. The room was wonderfully warm and cozy. I am a lucky fellow, he thought, rubbing his hands. This is a bit of all right. He found the guest book lying open on the piano, so he took out his pen and wrote down his name and address. There were only 2 other entries above his on the page, and as one always does with guest books, he started to read them. One was a Christopher Mulholland from Cardiff, and the other was Gregory W. Temple from Bristol. Huh, that's funny, he thought suddenly. Christopher Mulholland, that name rings a bell. Now, where on earth had he heard that rather unusual name before? Was he another boy at school? No. Oh, was it one of his sister's numerous young men she dated, perhaps, or a friend of his father's? No, it wasn't any of those. He glanced down again at the book. Christopher Mulholland, 231 Cathedral Road, Cardiff. Gregory W. Temple, 27 Sycamore Drive, Bristol. As a matter of fact, well, now that he came to think of it, he wasn't at all sure that the second name didn't have almost as much of a familiar ring about it as the first. Gregory Temple, he said aloud, searching his memory. Christopher Mulholland. Such charming boys! A voice behind him answered, and he turned and saw his landlady sailing into the room with a large silver tea tray in her hands. She was holding it well out in front of her and rather high up, as though the tray were a pair of reins on a frisky horse. I gotta pause there again for 2 things. Well, 3. One is Bricely. Bricely?
He probably knows them because they were missing and they were on the newspaper. So, and she killed them, so that's why they're missing.
Oh, wow, that took a bit of a turn. So you're saying he recognizes both names?
I bet they were on the milk bottles.
Of them being missing people?
She's
Those like mini martini glasses?
Well, I didn't have teacups, so we're going to have to use our imagination. But yes, so he recognizes the 2 names, and he's not quite sure why yet, but we'll figure that out here in a moment. So while he's figuring that out, the landlady comes in, and she has, use your imagination, this is my silver tea set with my little teacups on it and the thing. So when she comes in, normally when someone walks in with tea and you don't want to spill it, you would carry it so you have like a little balancy thing like this. That is not how she comes in. She comes in holding it like this. And then sets it down. So as opposed to carrying it low and here, she has it up here, carrying it out like that. Seika.
Maybe she put something in there and it was like dissolving, so she didn't.
You guys are going all kinds of fun ways with this. They sound somehow familiar. They do? How interesting. Yeah, I'm almost positive I've heard those names before somewhere. Isn't that queer? Oh, maybe it was in the newspapers? They weren't like famous in any way, were they? I mean like famous cricketers or footballers or something like that? Cricket, sorry, there's the silver tea set. Cricket is a game that's really popular over there. We still have time, my packing up children who are going to make me charge you points. I was going to give you your minute. Don't make me be grump at you. Famous, she said, setting the tea tray down on the low table in front of the sofa. Oh, no, I don't think they were famous. Oh, but they were extraordinarily handsome. Both of them. I can promise you that. They were tall and young and handsome, my dear. Just exactly like you.
She uses skin to make coats.
17-year-olds can be handsome.
Yeah, but
And so,
she's not a guy. That's not.
That is
She
illegal.
uses their skin to make coats.
wow, she's simply making a compliment about the fact that he is a handsome fellow.
No.
She was not saying, I think you're a good-looking guy.
But she's saying
That's
all
a
her
crime.
guests have been like that.
She's had good luck with handsome dudes staying there. It's not her fault that handsome guys stay there. So, man, don't jump to complete conclusions just because someone's older.
Brothers. Wait, what? Wait.
Once more, Billy glanced down at the book. No, look here, he said, noticing the dates. This last entry, that's over 2 years old. It is? Yes, indeed. And look, Christopher Mulholland's. His is nearly a year before that. That's more than 3 years ago. Dear me, she said, shaking her head and heaving a dainty little sigh. I never would have thought it. Huh. How time does fly away from us all, doesn't it, Mr. Wilkins? No, it's Weaver, Billy said. W-E-A-V-E-R. Oh, Psycho.
So, Gregory is W and Mr. Wilkins, so I think that's his middle name.
Oh, interesting. Oh, of course it is, she cried, sitting down on the sofa. How silly of me. I do apologize. In one ear and out the other. That's me, Mr. Weaver. You know something, Billy said. Something that's really quite extraordinary about all this. No, dear, I don't. All right, well, you see, both of these names, Mulholland and Temple, right now we're going to have to stop reading, even though we're in the middle of suspense, and come back tomorrow. Yeah, those of you who attempt to read ahead, I've not given you the end of the story, because there's a whole third page that I'm saving for later, because I don't trust you guys to not try and read ahead and illegally learn things with your own brain.
I don't do that.
Wait, so it's legal to watch
Tomorrow, we will get farther into it and figure out more of our foreshadowing